Hey, hi, everybody. This is the Call to Action Metro New York, and we're going to be interviewing two very active community organizers and workers on the HALT Bill and prison reform and reentry. One being Victor Pate, he works downstate, and Jerome Wright, who's our up in the woods Buffalo. If you each would like to, I'm Roe Sauerzopf, part of the CTA Metro New York. We have Art McGrath with us and Paula Acuti also on the board. So if you, Victor, would like to introduce yourself a bit.
Surely, thank you very much, and thank you for having me and finding this platform. So I'm Victor Pate, one of the two organizers with the HALT Solitary Confinement campaign, as well as a formerly incarcerated person. And I guess I can consider myself a survivor of solitary confinement. That's it for now. Go.
Jerome?
Yes, my name is Jerome Wright. I am part of the campaign as a statewide organizer with Victor. I like to think that we meet somewhere in Albany, that I go from Western New York down and he comes from the city up, and we try to cover as much of the state as possible. I am a formerly incarcerated, spent more than 3 decades incarcerated, and during that time spent over 7.5 years in solitary confinement. So I really feel like this is a personal mission for me, because I do know and understand the gravity of the situation, and I think that I can best articulate it for those who can't speak for themselves right now.
Great, great. Paula?
Well, I was wondering if you could describe to people what it was like being in solitary confinement. People, I think, don't really have any idea of what that was like as a human experience. Either one of you.
Shall I go first? Oh,
yeah.
So I guess I'll just touch on a few paces about that. And I always say this every time before I start this here. You know, it doesn't, you know, and this just speaks to why solitary needs to end, because of the torture, but not even because of the torture, but because of the collateral damages. Solitary is something you never get over. You learn to cope, you learn to deal, but you never get over it. And every time you talk about it, you transform back in that moment, that space, and that time, and that's not a really good feeling. But I guess a lot of us have learned in the work that we do to use this as a coping mechanism. Some people are not so fortunate, because some people never get back from that experience, and some people never recover from that experience because of the mental damage that often occurs to people in solitary confinement. So I'll leave it there for now, and I'll leave a space for my colleague to speak a little bit more. Solitary confinement is something that no human being should ever be exposed to. The only purpose that solitary confinement serves is totally, completely punitive. It does nothing to address a person's behavioral issues, especially if a person has mental health issues. Oftentimes people can go in without a mental health issue, and a lot of times they come out with mental health issues. Some of it is long-term, some of it is forever, and the experience of people being placed in solitary confinement does nothing for the safety nor the security of any correctional facility. No one should be placed in any solitary confinement whatsoever, and this is why we are advocating for the passage of the HALT Solitary Confinement Bill, because this is something that's cruel, it is inhumane. Nobody should be exposed to it. Nobody should have to go through this. You were not sentenced to torture, no matter what your crime was. Therefore, people should be treated humanely, and it is against the Declaration of Human Rights, it is against the Mandela Rule, and it is against the moral rules of the principle of the treatment of people in our prisons and jails. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you very
It didn't leave me much else to talk about. He kind of covered it, but I will talk about it from a more personal and intimate perspective. So to give you a difference, so he gave you the overview of how bad it is in the general sense. In an individual sense, I can tell you that most people have no conception whatsoever what solitary confinement is about. I don't care how many movies you've seen, how many times people explain it to you. It is something that you have to experience to really understand, and it's something you don't want to experience. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. It is torture from sun up to sundown. I don't care if they give you an hour of rec or 2 hours of rec, 5 hours of rec, it won't make a difference. That does not ameliorate the mental anguish, the physical torture, the spiritual. I mean, it breaks you down. He said it clearly earlier that I find myself considering myself a survivor, and I say survivor in the most loosest terms because I didn't come out of that experience unscathed. And I don't care if you spend 1 day or 1,000 days in solitary confinement, you will never, ever, ever forget that experience. And it won't be a pleasant one. I think the biggest misconception about solitary confinement is that when you hear the solitary, you think you're alone and you're quiet, and it's this place where you can hear crickets almost sounding, and nothing could be further from the truth. One of the greatest tortures of solitary is the cacophonous sound that you hear from sun up to sundown, 365 days, banging on the doors, people screaming, people wailing, people playing chess from 10 cells away, people just yelling on the gate, people kicking the gate, people trying to get the officer's attention, people trying to wake their neighbor up, people trying to get everybody ready for recreation, or it's just noise on top of noise. And it gets so excruciating that now I could be I don't care how much noise, I could sleep through anything. And that may feel like a benefit, but I'd rather have my sense of feel back, that if something is going on, I would jump up and be ready to defend myself, protect my family, or at least see what's going on. Where now I'm pretty much narcotized because I've been so desensitized by the consistent noise for year after day after day. And I think that's something most people don't really get an impression of. We have a soundtrack that I hope one day we could play for you guys of the actual unit, where they tell you, hey, you can hear the guys kicking and banging and screaming and yelling, and this goes on all day and more than half the night. Torture, torture, unadulterated.
Wow, that would be great. We'd love to schedule a time to play that.
Can do that. We can do that.
That would be great.
Thank you so much,
Actually,
Jerome. That
yeah.
really was a different perspective that I don't think anybody has heard before. Thank you for that.
Well,
And I was just going to mention also, when you, Jerome, you also offered up the actual sound, and I believe that's the sound for the 6x9 that we did, that we use as an educational tool. It's called 6x9. It's actually part of our educational tools that we use for our different various educational events that we occasionally put on. And I think that's accessible online. Actually, if you go in and you Google 6x9, you not only will get the sound, but you will also get an opportunity to see what we now use as a 3D virtual training tool of what it looks like and sounds like to be in a solitary confinement cell through 3D experience. But, you know, you would basically, you know, can see what we have a specific program that we use these 3D goggles for, and the 6x9 was loaded onto that. So people, when we go to do events, put the goggles on, the program runs. You hear our voices, about 7 of us actually made the voice part of it. And you hear us speaking as you're running through the virtual solitary confinement cell, and you can see it from different components and different angles. But the actual sound is on that particular run. Go ahead, Jerome, I can't hear you.
no, I'm looking at it right now, and it does come up. And I was just wondering if I could get some of the sound on right now. So
to play it for now, right?
Yeah, let me just see if I can get it to play for you guys can hear.
Yeah, that certainly is a different perspective. I believe you had some virtual thing up in Albany one time recently. when we were up there in January.
Yeah, when we went up there, I think we had that going on while we also had our solitary confinement cell, because you
Yeah.
usually use them both interchangeably when we do educational events. And when we went to Albany a few times, legislators went into the cell. We also had an opportunity for people to view the 6x9 solitary confinement cell. And also, like I say, listen, you hear the audio while you're looking at the pictures. But I think Jerome is trying to get the sound up for you now, so he may be able to hear somewhat of what that sounds like.
Physiological consequences of.
Here goes some of the sound.
There are.
Can you hear me, right?
Yeah.
We do.
Physical and physiological consequences of.
I had it queued right now. I don't know. But I don't want to waste it. I will pull it up and pause it, and then we'll play it towards the end. But again, I don't want to waste the recording while I'm trying.
That would be great.
Mm-hmm.
Art, you have any?
Yeah. So what's the situation in the New York State prisons with solitary? Is it worse in some places than others? Is there any rhyme or reason to what's happening with it?
Concern is even worse now than it's ever been. I guess it's kind of difficult to gauge what worse is. I think being in solitary by itself is just worse. I think that because of COVID-19 and how it has spread through the state facilities and stuff like that there, that people, they have actually been putting more people in solitary than they normally would have. And their reasoning is because that they're using this as an excuse to stop the spread of COVID-19, when in fact there's not doing anything to stop, address, arrest, whatever the case may be, because all you're doing is putting more people together, even though you're saying that you're separating them from the population. But on the same token, they still are in a small confined space within themselves. You also have correctional staff that is also confined in the space with them. So if you're talking about anything that even resembles them slowing down the spread of COVID-19 or decreasing the opportunity for infection rate, using solitary confinement as a means of quarantine has not done anything, and actually has even made situation worse. So when you're talking about worse, yeah, it's actually worse than worse because of COVID-19, because of people that are incarcerated that don't have opportunities for social distancing. So they now use solitary confinement as a means of quarantine, now what they're saying. So you not only have people who may already have been in solitary for punitive, administrative purposes or whatever the case may have, but now you're heaping more people in solitary, saying that they needed to be quarantined, and they're being exposed and to the same treatment that people might have been in there for. That's punitive segregation, or might have been given a sanction of solitary confinement. So it's even, I would say that it was worse in terms of what's happening now with regards to solitary confinement. So yeah, that's what I would say. Yeah.
No,
So go ahead.
It is worse. It's worse on another level. Let's say now that you feel like you are coming down with COVID, because you know they're confining you in a solitary-like state. That's going to make you reticent to tell anybody about your symptoms, which means you go from infecting people while you're asymptomatic to still infecting them when you become symptomatic, because you don't want to be locked up in a solitary situation. The other thing is, because of COVID, they have stopped movement within the facility. So that means if I did 30 days in solitary and I'm supposed to come out today, they're not letting me out today because there's no movement. So that means my 30 days could turn into 120 days of extra SHU time, and I get no other amenities. I do the time as if I was sentenced to 120 days instead of the regular original 30 days. So in those two ways, it has gotten exponentially worse. Not to mention because of COVID, you have less staff interaction, which means you're really pretty much alone without anything. They come to the end of the gallery and they yell down, does anybody need anything? And they either answer or don't, or they either come down the gallery or don't, but you're left more to yourself than before because a lot of staff don't want to be congregating in the area like that too. So it has gotten exponentially worse.
Wow.
Much worse.
Yeah.
And you, is it more prevalent with people of color in solitary confinement?
That is an excellent question. And at this time, let me tell you something. Let me give you these numbers. So Black and brown people represent 13–14% of the population in the state of New York. However, we represent 50% of the population in jail and prison, and 60% of those confined to solitary confinement. So if you want to tell me that that's not a racist paradigm, then I question how you're looking at things, because to have 60% of people in an isolation situation and they be Black and brown people is a racist statement by the state of New York.
Totally. Sounds totally. All right.
Are there any alternatives? I don't know really what they're using solitary for in the first place, but are there alternatives to solitary, or why, or is it?
Yeah, so in answer to your question, I'll reiterate. Solitary is used totally for punitive purposes, totally, as it's imposed on people now. They say, and I'm saying they, meaning correctional authorities, say that this is a means by which they keep people in line or make them behave, or if they misbehave according to them, then this is the end result. So that speaks to what it's used for and what its intent and purpose is, totally to punish, to break down, to destroy, to make people less than, and people come out oftentimes less than what they was before they went in. And yes, there are alternatives. The alternative is the humane to long-term solitary confinement, HALT, which basically stands for Humane Alternatives of Long-Term Solitary Confinement, which is a bill that is specifically designed for it to be an alternative, more humane, more programmatic, more transformative in terms of people being placed in total isolation for 23 to 24 hours a day. The Humane to Alternative Long-Term Isolated Confinement bill will consist of people having more out-of-cell time, having more interactive time, and more importantly, have programmatic services that will address and assist people in, if they have been placed there for any type of behavioral issues, we'll give them opportunity to address those behaviors. If a person has mental health issues, they will be receiving mental health treatment as opposed to no treatment at all, and which normally happens to people who go to solitary that already have mental health issues, and placing them in a circumstances that only exacerbates their conditions with no treatment whatsoever. Also, it will create a I guess you could say a transitional process for people coming out of solitary confinement that will either be being released back to general population and or being released to society. One thing I'd like to mention, and through personal experience, I had an opportunity, don't know how familiar you are, to visit the three Colorado state penitentiaries. The purpose of that was kind of sort of like a fact-finding mission between myself, three social workers from the Social Workers Against Solitary Confinement Coalition, and we actually went and visited to see the reforms that they made administratively, had nothing to do with legislation that were made and put in place by the Commissioner of Corrections. His name is Rick Ramesh. And what they actually did, they created what you consider, I guess you consider alternative unit step-down program that was incentive-based. So we actually went to the actual 3 prisons and visited these particular units, had an opportunity to speak one-on-one with the participants in the program. And I had an opportunity to go in one of the participants' cell out of the earshot and out of the eyes of the correctional staff that were our escorts that day. And I just basically asked them, I told them who I was and said I was from New York, formerly incarcerated, served time in solitary confinement. And I want to know, is this the real deal or is this just smoke and mirrors? Are they just doing this for us? He said to me, he said, I think he had been incarcerated for 13 years. And he said, you know, he said, I'm going to tell you honestly, he said, had they had a program like this 13 years ago, 12 years ago, he said, I doubt if I would have been a recidivist. I doubt if that I would still been involved in, you know, prison skullduggery, everything else, because the program that they were a part of actually made the relationships not only with the correctional staff, but it made relationship with each other much better. And the relationship that they had with the correctional officers, they found to be much more friendlier than it would if they had just been placed in a total solitary confinement unit. So the program that they implemented in Colorado has actually been, I guess you can say, like a template that, you know, other states should actually adopt, but they did this in Colorado and it's actually working. The staff, I had an opportunity to talk to. Some people had been there prior to the reforms, and I had an opportunity to speak to one of the sergeants that was in charge of the unit. He said, yo, Victor, he said, I'll tell you. He said, man, he said, I've been here for 20 plus years. He said, I can tell you that what happened prior to this program being implemented and the result of the program being implemented has made our jobs as correctional officers much easier. It has made the facility much safer, and it has made it much more secure. And the people that are part of this particular program, when they go through the program and they transition either back to general population and or transition back to society, are much better people. And they had a series of different levels that they would go through, and it's all incentive based. The more you do, the more engaged you are, the more privileges you get back. But I had an opportunity to see it and hear it from the people that were participants in the program, and I can tell you, any alternative that has programmatic services that addresses people's behaviors, that addresses people's mental health status, that it prepares people for society and for return is better than what we have here now. And the HALT Solitary Confinement Bill will address all issues and all components of alternatives to people being placed just in a cell 22 to 24 hours a day.
Wow.
It sounds like really a wonderful experience that you had there. And I'm kind of wondering, what is it that we can do to help achieve something like that here? How can we help to get the HALT bill passed to have that here in New York?
Oh boy, you done did the wrong. You done asked that question. You know, Jerome gonna get you now. You
Yeah.
got the right man to ask that question.
I will say what you're doing right now. First of all, we really appreciate your compassion and your commitment to exposing what a lot of people are unfamiliar with, and the reason why we continue to let it go. You know, my thing is this: if we were waterboarding and pulling people's fingernails out in jails, the world would be in an uproar, and they'd be calling that torture. And the more insidious torture is what goes on in these jails now, is the mental anguish and torture. And one of the things we need to do is to bring people out who don't have that lived experience, but say, you know what, I am human and this is not how we should be treating each other. Don't do it in my name in New York State. And if you guys could rally behind us as people saying, I've never experienced this, but I've seen enough, I've heard enough, and I know enough to know that this is not how we should continue to treat human beings in the state of New York, whether they're convicted or awaiting detainees, that I am against this. I think what we see in this movement right now with racial injustice in the street is that allies have been formed with different groups and different ethnic groups and everything to show that there is a preponderance of evidence that says that people do not agree with what's going on. And that's what we need. We need to have people like yourself standing with us at our actions, on our virtual things, and spreading the word, being the intermediary between us and the communities who are least impacted by this, because that's where, when we get the turnout from those people, that's where change will happen. They expect myself and Victor, who are formerly incarcerated, to be beating this drum. They expect activists who live that life to be out there beating the drum. They don't expect Roe and Paula and Arthur to be out there beating that drum. So when you guys are out there, then other people will take notice and say, maybe this is something we should be really ending in the state of New York.
Yeah, no, I think that's very true. I think one of the issues that we discussed last time that was holding up the HALT bill was the unions and the correction officers. And Victor's saying that the program in Colorado, the correction officers said it was actually better for them. So maybe we need to get working, looking at the unions too and talking to them.
Well, I don't know. I don't remember the discussion that we had last time that would have framed itself as the unions being our biggest impediment. Right now, our biggest impediment is the three leaders of the state: the Governor Cuomo, Carl Heastie, the Assembly leader, and Andrea Stewart-Cousins, the leader of the Senate. We have enough votes that that bill should have been voted on the floor and passed. They are usurping the democratic process, and they're not allowing it to go the way it's supposed to go. And then it would be on the onus on the governor. And what's even more travesty is that the governor a year ago said, we're not going to put in HALT, we're going to put in these regulations, put some in, and they've never been issued. They've never been ruled. No change has happened in over a year now. Now, I understand the pandemic hit and everything else hit, but before March, it had already been since last year in June that he put these regulations in, and they've never been used. So there was never an attempt, there's never been a good faith effort on the government to implement anything. And the difference with Colorado and New York in the big picture is that it was the commissioner of corrections who took it upon himself to spend 20 hours. He couldn't even do 24 hours, 20 hours in a cell, a solitary cell in the unit where he was one of the superintendents to find out what it was like. And he came out of that so moved that he's decided that this shouldn't be happening. We've asked the governor and the commissioner of corrections, we've asked everybody and their mother to take 1 minute and go in that cell and see if this is how we should be treating people. And none of them have done so, because if they do, they know they would be beholden after that to do something about it. And they have no desire to do that.
So Jerome,
Yes.
We all had a lot of bad experiences when Flanagan was running the Senate, and so many important bills were locked up, and a lot of those got passed, which we're personally happy about. But now we have Democrats running the Senate, the Assembly, and obviously the governor. So what's the problem here? What's going on?
The problem is that they want to put themselves off as being progressives, but they're actually conservative when it comes to criminal justice reform. The only reforms that have just happened now happened because of this sweeping racial unrest. These things that have been passed recently have been on the table for years. They didn't get passed, so it had to have a situation like the death of George Floyd to have this now blow up into this. It should not come down to that. They have the autonomy right now. Listen, the governor had been playing the Democrats against the Republicans the entire time the Republicans had the Senate. So he's never been a true Democrat. The fact that you have an African-American man and an African-American woman as heads of both of those caucuses, and they do not do this thing by bringing it to a vote, shows you that this is systemic. It has nothing to do with what's right or wrong. It has to do with the system that's in place that needs to be changed.
Well, what are they saying of why they're not moving this bill? What's Heastie saying, or what's Stewart-Cousins saying?
I'll let Victor answer that. Thank you.
So thank you much. So actually, neither one of them have really been saying much. Their actions have been saying it all. Their actions has basically, and you know, just and it's just so ironic, you know, that you know, we got the bill passed in 2018, and you know, come 2019, nothing happened, right? Um, and you know, we've met with Stuart Cousins a number of times, several times, I believe. Myself, I was part of a couple of those meetings, and you know, she supported, and yeah, you know, I she was a co-sponsor of this bill before she even became the head of the Senate. So just, I'm like I say, I'm kind of befuddled. So here's what happened. Jerome spoke to a little bit of that you know, Governor Cuomo, 2019, came up with these alleged administrative regulations that he wanted to implement as far as reforms or changes in solitary confinement. They went into the room, their councils, Senate and Assembly councils went in. They said that in not supporting the HALT bill, that they would be supporting Governor Cuomo's alleged regulation that he put forth that was supposedly had, and actually, you know, it was HALT bill in disguise. That's what it really was. It was HALT bill in disguise. Governor Cuomo shanghaied a few parts out of the HALT bill, proposed this here, put it on the table. They said, yes, we will support this here, because they figured they would be appeasing us as advocates, even though it was not the HALT bill, and that it would at least make it appear as though it was something. But that what it appeared to be was nothing but smoke and mirrors, because nothing ever happened, as Jerome pointed out. So they, to me, and I know we talked about, you know, being democratically controlled, and you know, people of color in position of decision making. To me, they have jumped ship on both sides, politically and ethnically. You know, in terms of, you know, their commitment to trying to do right, not only in the criminal injustice system, but trying to do right by people of color. And they have totally went to a whole nother side. So just by their actions alone, you know, they have not came out and said anything, like try to get anything from them as, okay, well, how come you're not supporting the HALT solitary confinement bill? I'm quite sure you'll get a whole lot of semantics, a whole lot of jargon, a whole lot of gobbledygook, and you really won't get any real honest answers for them as to why they're not bringing the HALT bill to the floor for a vote. We haven't gotten a solid answer for them as to why. We can only, I guess, gauge it by what they have not been doing, and what they have been doing. And what they have not been doing, and they have not been supporting the HALT bill being placed on the agenda. Every time there's a committee hearing, although we're hearing, I don't know, you know, because when you're not in the room, you really don't know, so you have to rely on information. So when they're having Senate hearings, committee hearings, and it's being placed on the committee hearing list to be talked about through the committee, she takes it off, because she has that authority to take it off, and vice versa. If it's going to be heard in the assembly leader has the ability to take it off the agenda. So they're not even going to let it get in the committee agenda, much less bringing it to the floor for a vote. So it's like, it's pitiful. It's shameful.
They're blocking.
I don't know what else. Yeah, I'm sorry.
They're blocking a discussion of it even.
They're actually doing that. And, you know, we have, like Jerome said, that we have more than enough co-sponsors in both houses, that if that bill went to the floor for a vote, it would easily get passed, because not only do we have signed on to co-sponsor, we have other legislators who have said, if they bring this bill to the floor for a vote, we'll vote for it. Never mind, we're not signed on. If they bring that bill to the floor, we will vote on it. And they're not even doing that. So to me, there's a lot of names I'd like to use, but because I'm a professional now, I won't. But I would like to say certain things about them, and I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed with them. Let me say that there. So without doubt, we'll ever hear anything from their mouths if they were asked, how come you're not supporting the HALT bill? How come you're not bringing the HALT bill to the floor for vote, even though you have a majority of each conference that is voting and say they are co-sponsors? If you bring the bill to the floor, we'll vote. How come you're not voting? I don't think we'll even get an answer from them. That's how far gone I believe they are.
That's really sad.
Yeah, it is
So now,
shameful.
what do we do now?
I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. We're sure not giving up. We are not discouraged. It's a little disappointing, but we're not discouraged. And I'm going to give that part to my friend Jerome because he know how to give it up. Go ahead.
Well, I will leave you with this phrase here. Disappointments are inevitable. Discouragement is a choice, and we choose not to be discouraged. So that's the number one thing we're going to do. We do have we did have a meeting this morning, and we've been meeting regularly to plan actions that we will be undertaking in order to keep our name fresh and to make noise about what's going on. One of the things I would like for you guys to do is to save on the date on your calendar of the 19th, next Wednesday. We will be holding our people's hearing. And so if you can chime in, if you can join us for that, you will see our platform, you will see the support we have, you will see a hearing where we are talking about the issues as far as them excluding prisons and jails from the COVID response, from the racial response. We'll have testimony from current and formerly incarcerated men and women, the family members. There are one or two other bills on that platform with us, but I think you would find it overall an interesting and engaging discussion. And as we develop our plans for rolling out some actions in the very near future, if you would avail yourself of the opportunity to participate, to do some outreach to some of your people, to be involved and help out. What we're trying to do now is really to coalesce a group of citizens that, like I said, that are not directly impacted, but feel that what they're doing is wrong and saying, not in my name. Don't do this in my name. As the state of New York, as the, as the governor, as the criminal justice arm of the state of New York, I do not agree with this, and I want it changed, and we want HALT to be the new norm for punishment in state and local facilities.
Now, what time on the 19th is that?
10?
10 o'clock in the morning. Yeah.
10 a.m.
We'll send you the information.
Right, the
Make
link
sure
and
that you
all
all
of that.
get it.
Right, and we would like you to do some outreach, get as many people. We're trying to get as many people as humanly possible to tune into this so that we can show the numbers of people interested and the number of people who are upset that this has not happened yet.
Okay, great. Yes, we will spread that word as soon as you send it to us.
Yes. Yeah.
I went to the town hall. I thought that was incredibly informative.
And they had a great guy that was emceeing too, right? Some guy named
A great.
No, I'm just teasing.
I was also very impressed by the woman who spoke. I don't recall her name. The one who was working with Donna Hilton.
Anissa Sabor?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, Anissa. And Anissa will be speaking. Matter of fact, Anissa will be one of the hearing officers along with myself and my wife and a couple of others. And then we have testimony from other people. So it will be like watching a Senate hearing without all the shenanigans. It will be a real hearing,
That's great. That's great. Were you able to, I know you have to go, Victor. Jerome, were you able to get the soundtrack?
Yes. Let me see. So you hear me loud and clear, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Says I'm trying to figure out how to make sure it's loud enough that you can hear, but let me turn this all the way up. Let me see. Can you hear it?
Yeah. What are we listening to?
So this is inside of a segregated housing unit, a special housing unit, which is solitary confinement. 1 second. Hold on, Baxter. Hold on. So this is a actual soundtrack that was smuggled out of an institutional segregated unit where you hear the guys, this is what goes on all day, yelling for the CO, banging on their cells, kicking on their doors. Some people actually losing their minds. You hear them screaming. You hear, when we play this like in schools and stuff, they always say, well, it sounds like animals. And then what it really shows is that when you put people in cages, you reduce them to their animalistic tendencies. And this is what happens. This is what you got.
Do you want to play it again, or?
Yeah, it was nice and loud. Could you hear it clearly?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying. I don't know why I can't. Let me see. Maybe if I put the earplugs in on there, it might play louder. I don't know. Hold on. Let me see. Hold on, back.
Well, you playing it from your computer microphone?
No, I was playing it from the microphone on the phone.
Oh, okay, okay.
So let me see. You hear it?
No.
Nothing now.
You don't hear anything?
No,
No.
we were hearing
It's
it.
only coming through the headphones there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
we
heard
heard.
it before. I have to just send them the link for it instead so they can hear it.
No,
Yeah.
nothing.
I will make sure that we send you guys a copy of it through the digitally, a link or something so that you can hear it in its entirety. It's pretty long. It's looped after a while, but it's pretty intense. So I will
Okay.
make sure that we figure out a way to get that to you. Send it to you. I'll email it to you.
Great, thank you.
Can share that.
Yes.
Anything else, Art, Paula?
Anything in particular we should focus on, Jerome, in terms of any legislators or the leaders, or?
To focus on, well, definitely Cuomo, Heasey, and Stuart Cousins should be feeling the heat.
Okay.
I don't know which way, how you want to go at them, which angle you would want to do, but anybody who can reach out and email, call, text, tweet, whatever, anything to keep, they don't, all right, Victor. Victor has to jump off now. He got the other. Thank you, brother. I'll talk to you later. Any way that we can keep their names, I can tell you this, Heasey and Stuart Cousins don't like their name tweeted, anything negative. So they're really social media conscious.
Okay.
Cuomo right now is so sky high, he doesn't care. So, but they do. And they're the first line that we need to get to Pat to get it on the floor. So if we can ramp up some pressure on them, we do have some social media toolkits if anybody's interested, since it shows you some sample tweets, some sample emails, some sample phone call scripts. If you need any of that stuff, I can get that to you. If you feel confident with, I know you've done this before and you feel confident doing it, just start to apply more pressure to them, because they will be coming back and it's going to be short. But if we can keep hard on their minds, we may be the one or two other bills other than the budget stuff that'll get any attention.
Great. Okay.
Okay, that's great. I actually live in Heastie's district, and I
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Call
Great.
them all the time.
Great. Well, yeah, call them some more. Get some other people to call them. I mean, I appreciate that you guys do, and I know you committed to it, but it's that one person who would never call, who's never done it before, who can get on there and say, I never really felt like doing this before, but I really feel badly that you have not done anything about this. What are you doing that really will make a difference?
Right. Got it.
And thank you guys so much for all you're doing and for this opportunity with us, and for just being allies in this battle and this fight, and for really being human beings and loving on us like we should be loving on each other. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, amen. Well, thank you very much, and we'll be